Many things we have been told about Thor seem to be a fucking joke. From his blonde hair and blue eyes, to his fake family members. I mean, he is only a religious figure made up by Scandinavians to give them a sense of being and moral guidance the way that most if not all religions are created. And in that sense he would simply have been created in the image of those that created him. But when you start using the characters of other religions, things start to get a little confusing. For example, if we were to take the religious character of Buddha, and place him in Iceland as an Indian prophet, nothing would be strange. We would just explain it as these Icelanders have adopted a religious system from India. But if you then create statues of Buddha with blonde hair or with a Viking helmet, then things might start to get confusing, and you could also accuse the Icelanders of cultural appropriation. Especially if you create a Buddha statue with a mobile phone, people would think they were fucking insane, as mobile phones were not created in the time which Buddha lived. So how then do the Scandinavians get away with culturally appropriating Greek mythology, and taking characters from the Trojan War, and turning them into Scandinavian gods that at least seem like they have no connection with the very Greek mythology from which they came from? Well, my friends, this is the same thing that happened with Christianity. A story supposed to be about Africans and Asians, ended up in modern times, solely, or predominantly reflecting Europeans, whose only significant role to play in Christianity as Europeans was ironically the murder of Yeshua, who they called Jesus. Other than that, Europeans have no real or significant part to play in any of the biblical stories. And this is what seems to have happened with Norse mythology. Let me explain why. Memnon was apparently mentioned for the first time in written history as the actual father of Thor in a book called the Prose Edda, a book that recorded Scandinavian cultural tales written in the 13th century by Snorri Sturluson. Why or how Thor later became associated with Odin is still a mystery to me, but his Mediterranean heritage is now becoming apparent. Although a theory online at present is that Snorri was attempting to legitimize Scandinavian mythology back in the 8th century by associating it with Greek culture, which was regarded as a higher level of culture and civilization comparative to the Scandinavians. A reason why Odin was named as Thor's father may have been because Odin was referred to as the All-Father or father to all the gods. The only problem with this abstract reference is that Odin himself has a father called Bor and a grandfather called Buri. Also, Loki was not even Odin's son, he was more his adopted son. So you might consider Odin in actuality as an adoptive or symbolic father as opposed to a literal one, bearing in mind it's all mythology in the first place. As for Thor's real father Memnon, he is the son of Eos, an actual Greek titan goddess who had sex with one of the Trojan princes named Tithonus. Tithonus was granted the gift of eternal life by Zeus at the request of his wife Eos, but not eternal youth, so Tithonus kept getting older, and hence more and more decrepit. Eventually his wife Eos put him out of his misery by turning him into a cricket to relieve him of such an existence. Memnon though has his own great story, and this of course is where I am again disappointed with European academic culture, as European culture in general has over the years decided not only to leave him out of cinematic representation, from movies like Troy, which is like leaving Goliath out of the Bible, but to present his offspring as a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white guy, recently played by Chris Hemsworth, a European-Australian actor. Why is this an injustice, you may ask? Well, if Memnon was an Ethiopian, and not just any Ethiopian but the king of the Ethiopians, then he would surely have been a black character. Unfortunately, some disingenuous historians acting as unbiased academics have tried to claim that the ancient Ethiopians were a mythical group of white people that came from Europe. Even claims for the real-life Ethiopia have been speculated to have European origins or white progenitors in an attempt to hijack or plagiarize original African culture. To my understanding though, just as with ancient Egypt and even Zimbabwean culture, this is simply a perpetuation of 19th century Eurocentric academia trying to create, and then instill a dominant European culture that just didn't exist in the real world. Unfortunately for them, it has long been established that much of European culture has been propagated by other non-European cultures and civilizations, especially by Africans. So for example, the Greek word Ethiopia itself is etymologically comprised of two words, those being etho, burnt, and ops, face, meaning that no matter where on the planet Earth you place Ethiopia, they will always resemble burnt-faced or sunburned people, complexion-wise. That's right, the very word Ethiopian basically means black person, or implies that they have black skin in tone. This, if we are to believe his mother was white in the modern sense of the word, which there is no evidence for, would make Thor mixed race, or brown skin, similar to Barack Obama or Bob Marley. But unfortunately we are not requiring our iconic cultural references to have any level of accuracy, even in this new alleged spirit of multiculturalism. I do understand why those of the 19th century were aiming to plagiarize history to justify their endeavors, but for modern academia to be also in denial of actual facts, I find embarrassing, as it permeates their whole culture, from etymology, biblical studies and religion, to mythology such as Troy, Perseus and Andromeda, the gods of Greece and Rome, etc. I'm actually embarrassed for them, especially in regards to such films as Gods of Egypt. Last couple of facts about Memnon. Like Achilles, he was also a demigod and could only be beaten by Achilles in battle. A battle so fundamentally important to the Trojan War, that even the gods stopped what they were doing to spectate over this monumental battle. This particular battle was the single longest combat battle of the whole Trojan War. Memnon was considered Troy's best warrior and hence best hope against the Greeks. Achilles was the same for the Greeks. Most importantly, this Ethiopian king was in fact the nephew of King Priam, the last king of Troy, making him the cousin of both Paris and Hector, as well as many other characters of the Trojan War on both sides, including the gods, who were also at the very least a reflection of the more ancient Egyptian gods. So who the fuck is this guy supposed to look like? So who the fuck does this fool look like?